one got away.
Snowball.
Styanax is a Warframe that has a good bit of everything, providing abundant support to his teammates while having snappy and easy to use grouping and debuffs. He provides boundless energy to his teammates along with replenishing their shields, meaning it's really hard to get down when you have a Styanax backing you up. Styanax's support is incredibly passive, meaning he can use his more active playstyle to get himself into the fray and absorb pressure using his debuffs. Styanax is a super fun, active Warframe with some of the best sound design in the entire game and is amazing for enabling your team via buffing up your ability to survive and cast abilities or by debuffing enemies. This video contains an ability augment breakdown, a HELMINTH section, a building and loadout guide, and then a demonstration and discussion at the end. The video is chaptered for your convenience, so feel free to skip around if you need more parts than others or don't need some parts at all. Don't forget to like, sub, hype, whatever. Love you guys tons, and hopefully you enjoy the Styanax guide. Styanax Prime will be out when this video is released, but additionally just wanted to leave a little note here that if you want to acquire Styanax, either for HELMINTH or for whatever reason, his farm is incredibly annoying and time-gated through call missions, so this is a reminder that he is about half the cost of most other Warframes in the Warframe in-game marketplace, and that when you buy it from there, it also includes his Warframe slot and reactor, which is a 40 plat value, which means that you can buy this Warframe for about like 130 plat or so, which is pretty convenient. I removed the acquisition part from my guides mostly, but I think this is really useful advice. Let's get started. Starting with Styanax's passive. Styanax's passive is Hoplite. Hoplite provides a multiplicative critical chance buff based on Styanax's current shields, including overshields and modded shields, of course, and the buff is doubled for spear guns. This is a solid, respectable buff to your damage that has a really easy condition to hit. Styanax has lots of shield synergies in his kit, and a mod like Prime Redirection weirdly turns into a damage mod, which is convenient and makes you feel better about putting it on there. It being multiplicative means you should use weapons that have the higher, base crit chance to get the most value out of it. We'll have to see how Aphentis Prime ends up. I'm not super optimistic, but for now, the list of good spear guns is very short, but if you can make it work, this actually ends up being a pretty massive stat stick of a passive. Styanax's first ability is AXIOS Javelin. Styanax throws his spear, AXIOS, incredibly fast in the direction of his reticle. The spear impales the first enemy hit and drags them along with the spear. The spear deals puncture damage to enemies in its path, along with providing a knockdown as well. If the spear connects with the surface while having an enemy impaled, it explodes, dealing additional blast damage in a respectable radius, along with creating a vortex that pulls in enemies for a short duration. AXIOS Javelin is a pretty underrated ability in Styanax's kit. The grouping on it is average, but its strength really lies in how snappy of an ability it is. Like me, it comes out super fast and groups enemies within a 20-meter radius with just a stretch mod. The surface condition sounds annoying, but Styanax performs this little hop when he casts AXIOS Javelin in midair, meaning it's really easy to just jump in the air and send the spear downwards at the ground on an enemy, creating basically an on-command vortex wherever you need it. My only beef with this ability is that it ragdolls enemies, which I just really don't like. My gameplay is kind of precision-based, that's what I enjoy. But any weapons with high punch-through, utilizing gas and blast, AoE, but especially melee options, work super well with AXIOS Javelin's grouping. Really solid. AXIOS Javelin also gets buffed by those weird universal weapon ability bonuses like Nourish, Arcane Arachne, so on and so forth. Styanax's second ability is THARROS Strike. Styanax bashes a wave forward with his shield, THARROS. The wave hits 135 degrees horizontally, so not a full 180 unfortunately, but also 160 degrees vertically, which means it has a hitbox above and below it. This is really good for slam builds, and with Styanax spending a lot of time in the air due to another one of his abilities we'll talk about in a second, it's actually very nice that it has the hitbox beneath it as well, and this aligns with your cursor, which is really useful if you're looking downwards. Enemies hit by the wave are knocked back, dealt little damage, and have their shields and armor reduced permanently. The enemies are also stunned, opening them up to finishers, which is good for some synergies. Each enemy hit by the wave heals Styanax, which is also really nice. It means we can run that Combat Discipline, Arcane Avenger, Arcane Intensify setup. Just gives us more power strength, more crit chance. Really nice stuff that Styanax wants. Defenses are stripped in full at 200% power strength, which is quite accessible, I would say. Keep in mind that obviously if you run corrosive projection, you can lower this to 164, I think. But because this works on shields, and the way that THARROS Strike works is it strips current shields, I would say you basically undoubtedly 100% want that 200% power strength, no doubt. THARROS Strike is also the ability that Styanax gives to other Warframes via the HELMINTH system, and I would say it's quite an A-grade HELMINTH option as well. THARROS Strike is very, very good. It's basically a snappier frontal Necros Terrify that works on shields, and normally THARROS Strike being like only a frontal cast is a weakness, but AXIOS Javelin's grouping means that any enemy within like 20 meters, so like a smaller room, is basically just on a silver platter to be fully stripped. It's really convenient. I would say this ability benefits a lot from casting speed, as even though it does come out pretty fast, it still interrupts Styanax from moving and performing their actions, so like a casting speed shard or two helps this ability a lot, as it helps most debuffs like it. The hitbox that sits below it, again, allows it to be used in aerial slam combos, which is really fun to do, as if slam needed more damage, just in case, who knows. This is a really good debuff, even though it's annoying to cast frequently. Peak sound design, it sounds like a metal pipe hitting someone. It's a very satisfying ability. I love THARROS Strike a lot. Especially if you like a more active playstyle. The animation is satisfying. Everything about this ability is just good in my opinion. Styanax's third ability is Rally Point. Styanax releases a rally call, increasing his threat level to draw fire his way, buffing himself and allies with Rally Point. Rally Point provides energy per second along with shield restoration per kill and assist from buffed allies, which flows into overshields. Rally Point is a buff that sticks to allies, meaning they don't need to stay in range of Styanax after he casts it. Casting speed helps here quite a lot, as Rally Point does inhibit all of your other actions, but weirdly, you could still use your weapons if you're performing the Rally Point cast mid-air. Very strange. If you're really obsessed with optimizing your DPS, I guess just keep that in mind. Rally Point is probably Styanax's most defining ability. The energy per second here is very strong, and the shield refill on kill helps both shield gating and shield tanking Warframes, which is probably 75-80% of the roster. I say this ability is like always good, but the energy is disproportionately better with lower level players. This is kind of like why I mentioned acquiring Styanax with Plat early on, maybe because his grind sucks. That energy per second helps so much in the early game relative to late game, where most higher level players will have, like, they don't build a build without having energy econ figured out. Usually. So it's just disproportionately stronger. So like there was, when Styanax came out, everyone got a free Styanax. That was like a golden age for newer players because you just could infinitely cast your abilities and really learn the Warframe. So really strong. This is a premier support ability, I would say. Works almost completely passively, which allows Styanax to be more active with his AXIOS Javelin and THARROS Strike. Styanax's fourth ability is Final Stand. Styanax leaps into the air, manifesting spectral warriors on either side of him. They will collectively throw a volley of javelins, firing 12 per second over a duration, meaning that duration actually scales the amount of javelins as opposed to strength, which you might traditionally think. Each javelin has slash damage on hit, and an AoE blast damage on surface collision, which is very similar to AXIOS Javelin. These deal guaranteed slash bleed DOTs, which is very strong, especially when we combine it with viral. Not as good as it used to be, but still quite strong. Final Stand's javelins can also be buffed by those universal weapon ability bonuses, again, like Nourish, Arachne, so on and so forth. Styanax can move fairly freely, albeit a little bit slow during Final Stand. Also, casting speed doesn't affect this ability much. It really only affects the time it takes for Styanax to leap up and start throwing spears. What does affect the ability is actually sprint speed, which determines how fast you move during Final Stand's cast. And I actually put a lot of stress on that in my build, because I think the ability to move faster during Final Stand is a very underrated part of Styanax. Final Stand also has a weird restriction, which feels like a very a restriction of a bygone era, where only one Final Stand can be cast per session of airtime, meaning Styanax must hit the ground before casting another. I really hope this restriction gets removed, unless it's somehow like a technical restriction, but this is super weird, especially in the year of like Uriel and whatnot. Very confusing. Final Stand is really quite good, providing lots of damage to lower to mid steel path enemies. Does an especially good job at clearing like the common enemies. I would say it won't do much against like the much tankier targets, Eximus and whatnot, but that's what we have like a weapon and THARROS Strike for, right? The main issue with Final Stand is that without its augment, which we'll get to, it's just kind of raw unscaling damage, which means it can fall off relatively late, but still it falls off. It's a little less appealing, right? And especially when we're casting, it's a long cast time, you can't cast it over and over without hitting the ground, and it's got a little bit of a slight movement inhibition to it. I'm not going to say it's weak, because it's definitely not, but there will be cases where you just rather pull out your weapon on an ability that looks so goddamn cool, and it kind of feels like a shame. But with some synergies with the augment and some movement synergies, the aesthetic's amazing. We can make this ability shine very easily. Final Stand is incredibly strong, but again, it's got some weird built-in restrictions that I just don't really care for. Looking to Styanax's augments, all three of them are pretty good, though the mileage still does vary a bit, but I like all of them personally. Starting with Axios Javelin ears. Axios Javelin augment A pair of Styanax specters spawn to throw javelins, creating vortexes on impact. Impaling the enemy increases the vortex duration by 5 seconds. This means you get the guaranteed vortex without having to play with the surface hitting condition, which is actually pretty nice. If you're using AXIOS Javelin with like melee weapons or AoE options, this augment is a huge QOL buff. That being said, in my opinion, it's mostly just a QOL buff. Quality of life buffs just kind of end up being like dealer's choice. If they're worth the mod slot, it totally ends up being up to the player. It definitely increases the active portion of Styanax's gameplay and lets you play a whole lot faster. It does technically mean you suck in more enemies, which is super nice. But in my opinion, it's just kind of like, I'd rather use AXIOS Javelin regularly and not lose the mod slot. Just a personal opinion, though. I think this augment is quite strong. THARROS Lethality increases critical damage by 100% on enemies you hit. Critical damage bonus is doubled for spear guns. Very simple, strong augment that basically just amps your damage in your main combo course of play. Adds a lot of volume in terms of damage, but like Styanax's passive, it does want you to use crit weaponry. Although in this case, since it's crit damage, you know, your enervate stuff still is going to remain buffed, which is really good. This just kind of ensures the enemy that you hit with Tharo Strike definitely explodes, which is nice. The spear gun bonus is actually like also really nice because you're gonna, again, the list of good spear guns is short, but we'll see. I use the Lieutenant Ferox, and doubling that buff in my build ends up being about 500% crit damage, which is quite a lot. Again, if there are more better spear guns, I think that this whole like spear gun aesthetic would be like way better. But their lethality is still really good, and I consider it on most builds. Intrepid Stand. Each javelin that damages an enemy grants 60 Overguard to Styanax and 30 Overguard to his allies within affinity range. Intrepid Stand is a very, very good augment, although I do find it a little overrated for Styanax himself. Unlike the main team Overguard heads, like Dante and Frost are the main ones that come to mind, Styanax's shield synergies allow him to live a pretty happy life without the help of Overguard. Like, if Dante gets his Overguard stripped and his shield gate breaks, he like turns to dust immediately. Frost is like a little more durable, I would say, but like those frames, they want their Overguard. That's kind of their main survivability. If you throw on like an Arcane Aegis and like one extra shield synergy on Styanax, he can live without Intrepid Stand. If you were taking Intrepid Stand, your goal should be like to support your team, along with like status immunity being pretty nice, I would say. Styanax is a support though, so like you kind of end up taking it anyway. I do think Intrepid Stand is going to make its way onto like 90% of Styanax builds. But I'm not gonna, you just don't need it. People kind of pretend that this is must take in the same way that like Icy Avalanche is. I just disagree with that notion personally. One thing for me is that I think Arcane Truculence, which is, we'll go into the build section, is like amazing on Styanax. There will be like a 2 to 3 minute rant on why I think it's so good on him. But also it's just like consistent Overguard per enemy hit. It basically means that you're going to consistently get that Overgate, which turns Final Stand into temporary immortality. Obviously, this is like less compelling when Final Stand's damage eventually later on falls off, but overall, it's just nice to have like a second survivability mechanism. The big question when you're modding Styanax, which we'll talk about in a second, is where your overtanking starts, or where your overtanking ends, and where your shield tanking starts, and how much you want to invest in terms of arcanes, mods, so on and so forth when you're trying to like build them. But Intrepid Stand, very, very strong augment. I would say not must take, but it's definitely very strong, and you should take it in most builds. Styanax is a frame who definitely doesn't need the HELMINTH system at all. His kit is super complete, but there are some HELMINTH options that really, really stick out to me. Breach Surge with his crit synergies, if you're using more single target weapons, obviously, like always, pretty good in my opinion. The main one that everyone talks about is Nourish, and I agree. So Nourish allows you to do extra damage, which will tie to your spear abilities. So Final Stand and AXIOS Javelin. This will provide the energy multiplier to yourself and all of your teammates, along with Rally Point, which can like usually triple the amount, double or triple the amount of energy, which can end up being like 20 energy per second, which is absolutely ridiculous. I do think personally that Nourish is mildly overrated. But that doesn't mean it's it's very good. It's very, very good. It is one of Styanax's best subsumes. But especially if you're running Truculence, which kind of takes away a lot of the Nourish or a lot of the viral work that has to be done, you don't need Nourish. Okay, don't stress out. I know Grendel's a hard subsume to get. So if you're a Styanax player and you just feel like you need Nourish, I don't believe that is true. But it is very strong. I'm not going to lie to you. Eclipse or Nullstar, that provides DR. That is mainly if you are going for a more shield tank approach, but you don't want to use Intrepid Stand. That is a super good approach for that. Omamori, again, that gives you basically that 50% Overguard DR, which is really unique. Could be pretty fun. Of course, roars, Auda's Whisper. I mean, like, listen, right? I get it. There's those two are both very strong, and Styanax synergizes well with all of them, right? It all works. Reeve is fun for the shield vamp. There's a lot of like fun stuff here. But of course, just a Wrathful Advance for a melee setup is really good. Just know that you don't really need the system all too much, and so what you take here is more for fun. In terms of what ability you replace, I would say basically always AXIOS Javelin, although you are not crazy if you remove Final Stand. Some people, especially if you like have no interest in using the Augment, Final Stand does great damage, but like it's just not everyone's cup of tea in terms of actually executing that damage. Some people just want to use their weapons, and if you just want to use your weapons and you're not using Intrepid Stand, then there's no point in last stand. At that point, it's good for the precision intensify slot, in my opinion. I would say in most cases, though, I do end up removing AXIOS Javelin or nothing at all. Modding Styanax is a pretty simple experience. The frame is pretty strong, and therefore you end up with a pretty balanced build, and you're just gonna have pretty solid outcomes. In terms of modding, we don't really need health. You do want shields though for the hoplite passive, and also just because you have a lot of shields, and you know you want rally point to get extra value. So going something like Prime Redirection is solid. There's also synergies like Arcane Aegis, like Fast Deflection, like Adaptation, that allow those shields to go further, especially if you're not using Intrepid Stand for the Overguard. You might definitely want that. But otherwise, just standard shield stuff, nothing crazy. For energy, it's just going to be Prime Flow. You don't need any other regen. Rally Point does the trick, especially if you have Nourish, which in this case I do. Again, not required, but I think it's just really strong for the whole support kit that I'm kind of throwing together here. Prime Flow just lets us store all of the energy that we're regenerating. Another big thing here I forgot to mention is Arcane Expertise. I think is mildly underrated on Styanax. It's definitely more of a Hildren Arcane, but I think it's really strong, and if you're using higher power strength, which some Styanax builds go way over an investment in terms of strength, which I don't blame them at all. Expertise just gets stronger and stronger that way, and your passive damage gets stronger and stronger that way, to a point where it becomes a very, very competent stat stick, as I mentioned earlier. Note that my Styanax build is pretty personalized, especially when it comes to the flex slots here, the aura slot. You can go mecha here, mecha set, you can go whatever you want, steel charge. I take these sprint speeds because I hate being slow during final stand. It is literally that simple. That is how it scales. So I take the sprint speed because I love moving fast in the final stand. I think it's super, super fun. Lets you cover more area. And makes it feel less like you're chained down. I don't really like that, like how slow the ability moves in base. For your duration, I think the best arcane here is going to be Arcane Concentration. I'll explain why I don't use it, but basically this allows your buff cycles to have plus 60% power duration, which is so good. And this also allows your final stands to throw more spears, which generates more overguard. Really, really strong. It means that like your teammates can have like 80-second rally points, nourishes, and they're just never going to die, especially in like an EDA, ETA content where surviving is a little bit tricky. If you have like energy negative modifiers, this can help a ton, along with the overguard that he's already providing, which is super good. The main reason that I don't opt for concentration, even though I do think it's better, is because I don't want to throw extra spears to gain extra overguard without increasing the overguard cap. And increasing the overguard cap occurs with power strength, not power duration, because I want to manage arcane truculence properly. If I cap out on my overguard too fast, then arcane truculence becomes a very sloppy arcane to try to utilize, and it can in some cases become like a dead slot, right? I don't think this arcane is, again, I don't think it's the best on Styanax, but I think it's really, really strong and really, really fun. Rally point increases the aggression of enemies towards you. You will take more damage on your overguard, which you want, so you can stack truculence, and your enemies will take less damage on their overguard, which you also want because you want to defend your teammates. I personally love truculence. I think it's a really unique, fun arcane, but I would say augmented plus concentration is super, super good. You know, hot shot with like null star, whatever. If you're doing like a full shield tank build, there's a gazillion things you could do. Efficiency, not a relevant stat here at all. Rally point makes this the case, so we just take blind rage. We want the power strength, especially for the full THARROS strike strip, and then we obviously, again, rally point generates enough energy to where efficiency is not a concern for us. Range is a bit of a flex slot here. If you have AXIOS Javelin, AXIOS Javelineers, then there's a chance that you're going to want maybe a stretch and maybe additionally an auger reach or a cunning drift, especially if you're doing that melee build. It's just a really, really strong grouping piece of utility, and I really recommend it. Also, just being able to affect your teammates easier with Nourish and Rally Point, that's what I have this here for. Also, just being able to hit more enemies with THARROS Strike is pretty nice if you're not running AXIOS Javelin. If you're running AXIOS Javelin, the enemies are grouped anyway, so you kind of need the range anyway. I don't know. A little bit complicated. I think stretch for me does the trick, but if you threw an auger reach or a cunning drift, I would not be offended. That makes total sense to me. So strength here, I would say in the average Styanax build, 200% strength or anything around it, slightly above it, totally fine. You want to full strip shields and you want to full strip armor. That's the main concern. Anything past that kind of goes into some less relevant buckets. So Final Stand's armor, or Final Stand's Overguard cap, Overguard per spear, you know, rally points, shield per kill, which is going to be a ton of shields anyway, so it's not a super big deal. The energy rate, Nourish, these multiplying together is really, really strong because Nourish scales with power strength, and then so does the rally points. Energy per second, again, very, very strong. Also, THARROS lethality here is a big thing for me, so, you know, just critical damage, and then when they get doubles with the spear gun, it's very, very good. You could also swap this out for what's it called? The Archon Intensify, and then take like Combat Discipline here. You could take Arcane Avenger here and run that combo because you heal with Tharo Strike. There's a lot of modding here you can do. Styanax is a super complete kit, which generally leads to well-balanced and fun modding experiences because you're not trying to overcompensate for any extreme weaknesses, which is really nice. So yeah, that kind of explains it. Again, you can lean it. The biggest question you're going to ask yourself while you're modding Styanax is, first of all, like, do I want to subsume, right? And usually Nourish is the answer. Again, do I think it's overrated? Yes, but do I think it's just so disgustingly strong? Also, yes. But the big question you're going to ask yourself is, where does my over-tanking end, and where does my shield tanking start if I have any interest in that at all? Just because when you get to higher levels, Styanax's Overguard starts to melt pretty quickly. He's no Dante, right? And at that point, maybe using rally points shield per kill is a little more reliable, but you can also use both. It's just a matter of, you know, you're dedicating mods to that, right? Whether it's an adaptation, whether it's Intrepid Stand, whatever you decide to do, right? When it comes to loadouts for Styanax, again, because he's a pretty well-balanced frame, you get a lot to do. Nautilus Prime with Burglas, super basic. If you don't take AXIOS Javelin, you could take Cordon here, and it would kind of serve a similar purpose and help you out with your Tharo strikes, so I do recommend that. Tenet Ferox here is a spear gun, one of the only good spear guns I know of. We'll have to see how Ventus Prime is, but I'm not too enthused about it. Looks super cool with the skin. Here's the build. Here's the ribbon. Just a simple gas build. I don't think it's great. I don't think it's bad. But we also take Amalgam Serration here, which is for that sprint speed, which is for Final Stand. Again, we want weapons that have high crit for Hoplite and for Tharo lethality. Now here, we just use Tharo lethality because the crit chance on the new core sucks, but the crit damage is so high that Tharo lethality is able to do a bunch. I wouldn't really recommend this weapon nearly as much if you're not using Tharo lethality. It's just a mod I really, really like, an augment I really like, but I don't think it's that strong, generally. And then the Sanctity Magistar here, just for slam combos. You can really run whatever you want. Styanax has a super unique synergy with the Rakta Dark Dagger, which gives you shields and overshields when you strike irradiated targets and has built-in radiation. And that is a super fun, super strong synergy I strongly recommend. In terms of shards here, I removed them in preparation for Styanax Prime, but I would say 2 casting speed and then literally whatever you want. More power strength is good, more duration is good. If you want to do melee, then the purple shards are going to do the trick. Another big synergy as well, if you get your energy pool higher, which you could do this with Archon shards, is actually a primary overcharge. Right, that one is pretty solid with Styanax because he keeps his energy high. It's no Garuda, it's no Harrow, but it does a pretty good job. In terms of focus school, usually it's dealer's choice, but in my opinion, it's a little more cut and dry. Vazarin, you just really don't need the survivability that bad, although the affinity range for Intrepid Stand could be super good, and, like, you know, Styanax is a support, so this one does make some sense. Unairu, you don't need the defense strip very much at all. Xenarch, you don't need the energy. Naramon is a matter of if you're going melee or not, more so. It really doesn't have anything to do with Styanax. And then Maturai. I just think Maturai, the casting speed and the power strength from power transfer and sling strength are just, I don't like saying it, but like damn near best in slot. It feels incredible. Styanax loves his casting speed more than I would say like the average Warframe. Not so much like Necros or anything, but he definitely really likes it. Otherwise, again, run crit weapons, run whatever weapon you want. Styanax, he has a ton of value up front. You could literally erase this passive from the game and he would be just fine. But I would recommend trying to take advantage of it, as extra crit stats are just generally good. And again, I use Tharo lethality, which means that, you know, that synergy is further pushed. Alright, so we're gonna hop into a solo Circulus as we usually do. I think that the results here will be like pretty okay. Again, I think the Tenet Ferox just isn't. It's all right. Styanax makes it a lot better, and also I'm not sure that my build is perfect. So we are going to head in. One thing that I honestly recommend is preparation. I think preparation is very underrated as a mod, and it lets Styanax get that first cycle going really easily. Like in this case, we're kind of going to have to fight for a little bit. Also, you could for Archon Shards. You could totally, you could opt for like Equilibrium, you could opt for Energy on spawn very easily. So what we're going to kind of do here is just, we want to lead with our combo, see if we can get some enemies to drop some orbs for us. Styanax is, again, he has like those high shields, which makes him super durable. And then also, this wouldn't even really be an issue. We'll pop Nourish. This wouldn't really be a super big issue if we were just shield tanking. Like, right, like if Dante doesn't, there we go. Okay, cool. So we're gonna Sling Strength there, which is really important. Or it's not Sling Strength. It's the other one that gives you the casting speed. That is super important. And like you'll notice that with Rally Point, I can completely ignore Last Stand if I want to. Like that is, I am well within my right to do that. One thing with Attendant Ferox is you actually don't really want to reload it all the time because it just has an auto reload feature in. It doesn't even like really say it anywhere besides the wiki as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, it reloads like a third of its mag every second holstered, which is super good. And we're just gonna run through Shield Bash, enjoy the Apex sound design. It's just beautiful. But every time we do our rotation, I do strongly recommend that you Matter Eye. For the Sling Strength and the casting speed, it's just super good. And these enemies, they just kind of evaporate. These are not, I mean, they're Steel Path, but these are not the strongest. I would like a little bit stronger enemies. Usually I try to do the Fisher because it spawns slightly higher level enemies, but there wasn't one available. And the update literally comes out in like the next 12 hours or less. So we're here. This is kind of it. I'm going to start using Last Stand in a second here. But as you'll see, like everything is primed with Viral very effectively. But once we start using Intrepid Stand, it will become even crazier. It just gives us this layer of status immunity as well, which is really good. Again, rotation's on its way down, so we're just gonna Sling Strength there. It'll make a difference. Like, Sling Strength isn't something many players optimize totally, and that's especially the case when it comes to, like, just gaining the power strength. But the disgusting difference between actually, like, casting the rotation is like insane. Rally Point is a slow ability. It's awesome, it's strong, but it is very, very slow. If I was using like the mecha set here, this would be even stronger with the Kubanu Core. Very, very strong synergy with THARROS lethality, mecha set, all that is super strong. These enemies just kind of dissolve. One of the kind of most unfortunate parts about Styanax is he used to be a whole lot stronger before the armor changes, and I guess I could elaborate on that. As these enemies still die. Like, they absolutely die. But, like, once, usually, like, Eximus, they don't die, nearly as fast. Once the enemies hit, like, higher level hundreds, thousands, 4 digits, they definitely have a harder time dying, especially without any kind of viral priming. Truculence, as you can see, we have unfortunately, like, maxed out. It's just, it's really rough to make work, but usually in those 4-player lobbies, like, I notice I take a lot more heat, and I'm able to make Truculence work for me. But yeah, basically what happened is the health of enemies got increased. Oh god, I felt it. I felt how slow the cast was there because I didn't use my synergies. Disgusting. Basically the health of enemies got increased in order to compensate for how over-reliant most enemies, especially the Grineer namely, were reliant on armor to survive, and so you needed the full armor strip in a lot of situations. Otherwise, you were just kind of SOL. So they increased the amount of health the enemies had, but decreased the armor, and so basically the armor capped out, which means that slash procs, which go beneath armor, became significantly weaker because now their gimmick of going past armor, they're not going past nearly as much armor as they were at one point, which just means the slash procs are inherently, you need to do a lot more of them in order to get any value. Coming down here, I guess I can show you the slam combo I was discussing. I'm gonna get my weapon out here. So you can basically hit a slam up top and then go down like this. Again, it's got the hitbox below, so you're able to do that. It's a little bit like tricky to do, I think, but it is definitely, it's definitely there. I think melee Styanax is one of the more fun ways to play him. You can also cancel the end lag of a slam with THARROS Strike if you want to continue the debuffing process. Obviously, you can always end it with a roll too, but it's, you know, if I get to hear, I want to hear as many metal pipes clashing as possible. And that's really it. Styanax is fortunately a very simple character. Honestly, playing him as a support is a lot more engaging than playing him alone. He's really strong, but you'll notice that even without casting Last Stand very much at all, I think I've maybe casted it 10-15 times. I'm just so stacked up on Overguard. And obviously that's because I'm killing a lot of enemies, so they don't really get the opportunity to deal damage to me. Yeah, this is all that Styanax does. We're at, you know, about 100 kpm. That has more to do with the weapons that we're using, obviously. And yeah, that's really it. I would say, oh, another strong thing with Thrax. Thrax get like actually just bent over and fucked by THARROS strike. Being able to also hit Demol. I thought he was in bed. See you later. Okay. THARROS strike is able to knock back Demolis, other priority targets, and just it really ensures that that target is going to die, which is nice. Oh, Acolyte's gonna spawn. What a treat. Okay, we'll take care of that first. I guess I could show you, get a chance to show you how much damage Last Stand can do to an Acolyte. So hopefully it's not violence. It totally is violence, you bastard. That's okay damage. Now you're getting slammed, unfortunately, but yeah, that's like, you know, that's respectable damage. It's not bad. It's just it got a lot weaker. One thing that you can do also that I really recommend is obviously casting THARROS strike on the Grenier won't do much when you're trying to kill them with Last Stand, but if you can kill them, or if you can hit them with THARROS strike, hit Corpus with THARROS strike, that will take their shields off and make killing them with Last Stand a whole lot easier. So even though some of it is a little bit weaker, you can still definitely make it work. And again, the difference between the fact that you can't cast 2 subsequent Last Stands is still just the most confusing restriction to me. Whatever. Anyway, that basically wraps it up. This character is very good. That's all there is to it. As a support, I would say he gets a lot more of his value. His basic gameplay is not the most flashy. It's really about the stats he's providing. The lower cortisol environment of just having infinite energy is something that cannot be underrated. So, yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed the demonstration. We'll get on to the final discussion bit. I'll see you in a second. Styanax is one of the first guides, I guess besides the Dante guide, that I made purely because, again, people are getting a free Dante, people are going to get Styanax Prime, so I decided that I'd make the guide. With Styanax, I actually, like, appreciated the character more and more the more I recorded, which is the first time that's ever happened. This raid was so fun. Like, he's a support, but all of his support is very passive, and the rest of his kit has him really getting in there. And, like, that support plus active debuffing playstyle fits his Spartan theme, like, so disgustingly well. The character is satisfying to play. The sounds are great. I really love this Warframe. Like, I really appreciate him so much more as a support. You know, and he's not just, like, you set and forget your abilities. Like, with Dante, you kind of set and forget your abilities, and you start the weapons platform. That's all you do. And again, love Dante. No shade. I made the whole guide. But with this frame, you press your support abilities, and then you get in there. You get active, and that is super, super fun. You're applying debuffs or killing shit yourself, but all your support just works unconditionally. I guess, unless you consider hitting enemies with your spears a condition for Intrepid Stand. And yeah, this frame is really, really fun, and I underappreciated him so much. Also, didn't really understand, like, Intrepid Stand gains so much more Overguard than I remember. I know it didn't have a cap a while back, but yeah. If you mod this frame properly, even remotely, I think you will get insane outcomes, and I think he is genuinely one of the most worth frames to buy with Platinum early on. And I had mentioned that earlier. I promise this isn't a sponsored video by DE, but now that this Prime's out, he's going to be a lot more affordable and accessible to get. But yeah, this frame rocks. I absolutely love Styanax. I love his playstyle. I love his role. He feels like one unit. That does a little bit of everything, but not a lot of everything to the point where it's suffocating, which is where Modern Warframe feels like it's going. Yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed this guide. This was mildly rushed, I'll admit, but hopefully you still enjoyed it. And I love you guys lots. Thanks for this, subs, hypes, likes, all that support on my videos, and I'll have to see you in the next one. Catch you on the flip. Bye-bye.